Hey everyone, and welcome to today's Explainer. Today, we're going to completely dismantle the complex, kind of hidden maths behind one of life's absolutely biggest financial decisions, renting versus buying a home. If you think you already know exactly how this equation works, well, get ready, because we're going to dive into some models that might just shift your perspective entirely. Okay, let's dive into this. Renting is throwing money away. I mean, we've all heard it, right? It's basically the ultimate societal myth, handed down to almost every single person before they go out and buy a home. You hear it repeated at family dinners, by your well-meaning friends, and for sure by your real estate agent. But that brings us to a really uncomfortable question. What if buying actually sets your money on fire? That's the core cognitive dissonance we're exploring in this explainer. We're going to contrast that traditional American dream you've always been sold with the cold, hard reality of what financial experts call unrecoverable costs. So let's jump right into part one, the homeowner's trap. To really understand this trap, we're going to follow the paths of two different buyers, Aaron and his coworker Scott. Now, these guys represent the two most common ways people approach buying a house today. And spoiler alert, both of them are about to fall into a mathematical trap they can't even see. Aaron is your classic buy-the-book buyer. He did everything right. He carefully saved up a 20% down payment, he shopped around for the absolute best interest rates, and smartly bought a $400,000 house. Scott, on the other hand, is what we'd call the stretched buyer. He believed so deeply that renting was a waste of money that he basically bought the biggest house the bank would approve him for, a $475,000 house, putting only 10% down. Why? Because Scott firmly believed that a bigger house automatically equaled more wealth. So why did Scott push himself to his absolute financial limit? Well, it all comes down to four really dangerous myths. The idea that renting is throwing money away, that a house acts as forced savings, that real estate always goes up, and that buying automatically builds wealth. And honestly, the entire system is built to push you toward the biggest purchase you can possibly tolerate. Just think about it for a second. Lenders use your pre-approval as a shopping ceiling, not a budget, because bigger loans mean more interest for them. And real estate agents, they're earning percentage-based commissions. The whole ecosystem feeds on these exact myths to convince you to overbuy. Which perfectly sets up part two, the invisible costs of owning. Now, Aaron thought he had outsmarted the system because his new mortgage payment was roughly the same as his old rent. But this traditional mortgage versus rent comparison is totally flawed because it completely ignores the invisible, unrecoverable math. And this brilliantly illustrates what I mean. Look at Aaron's very first monthly payment of $2,022. A massive 85% of it, $1,733, goes straight to the bank as interest. A tiny 15% actually goes toward owning a sliver of his house. That $1,700 is exactly as gone as rent. This is the shocking reality of amortization. It's a system where banks make sure you pay off their interest long before you ever actually own the house. Now, you might be wondering, but wait, my house is going up in value, right? Well, we can pretty much shatter that appreciation myth right now. Historically speaking, across decades, real estate only beats inflation by 1 to 2% a year. That's literally it, not the crazy double-digit explosion people remember from a few uniquely hot years. In fact, right now, in many major U.S. metros, home prices are actually losing to inflation. The asset that everyone calls a guaranteed investment can and absolutely does go backward in real terms. And that brings us to the most expensive, invisible cost of the whole shebang. Opportunity cost. See, Aaron locked $80,000 into his down payment, and he's incredibly proud of it. But because his house barely beats inflation, that cash is quietly the worst performing asset in his entire portfolio. If Aaron had just put that $80,000 into a basic index fund, instead, earning the historical average of 7%, it would have grown by $32,000 over 5 years. He completely sacrificed that growth, making it this massive, invisible cost. So what does this all mean? It means we have to calculate the true yearly cost of owning, the money you absolutely, positively never get back. Experts used to call this the 5% rule, but modern mortgage rates mean we need an update. Welcome to the new 7% rule of unrecoverable costs. Basically, you lose 1% of your home's value to property tax, another 1% to maintenance, and a massive 5% to the cost of capital, which is just the interest paid to the bank at today's rates. That is 7% of your home's value vanishing into thin air every single year, totally separate from whatever equity you think you're building. And hey, remember Scott? Because he fell for those myths even harder, he escaped his $2,000 rent just to turn around and literally set $3,400 on fire every single month. That's going straight to interest, property taxes, upkeep, and private mortgage insurance.
So he didn't escape throwing money away. He mathematically just upgraded to throwing away way more of it.
All right, moving on to part 3, the renter's secret weapon. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is the grand reveal. Let's fast forward 5 years to the final tally. This is the ultimate mic drop moment right here. Aaron paid in for 5 straight years, but when he decides to sell, the 6% selling costs and closing fees entirely wipe out his principal. His 5-year net wealth gain is an agonizing $3,600. And Scott? He is just completely buried in interest. But the renter? The renter finishes the 5 years sitting on $190,000 in net wealth. No way, right? So how does that even happen? Look, we need to be crystal clear about this. The renter only wins because she actually invested the $92,000 in down payment and closing costs she would have spent on a house, plus the $800 a month she saved by renting instead of taking on Aaron's full home ownership costs. She put all of that into the market at a 7% return. Renting only wins if you treat the gap between your rent and a potential mortgage like a mandatory investment, not just some excuse for lifestyle inflation. Which leads us to our final section, part 4, 4 checks before you buy. Before you ever even think about calling a real estate agent, you really need to run 4 mathematical checks on your own situation. Check number 1 is the price to rent ratio. It's incredibly simple division. Just take the purchase price of the home you want to buy and divide it by the total annual rent of a comparable place in the exact same neighborhood. This quick little calculation instantly reveals which side of the real estate bet your specific local market is currently on. And that magic threshold number you're looking for? It's 15. If the result of your division is under 15, well, the math heavily favors buying. If the number falls between 16 and 20, it kind of leans toward renting. But if your ratio is 21 or higher, renting is mathematically the clear, undeniable winner. Okay, check number 2 is the adjusted cost rule, and this brings in those unrecoverable costs we talked about. Step 1, multiply the home's price by 6% based on today's rates. Step 2, divide that number by 12 to find your true, unrecoverable monthly cost of owning. Step 3, compare that figure to a comparable monthly rent. If renting is cheaper than this final number, then renting mathematically wins, and that gap is yours to invest. Check number 3 is the break-even horizon. You really have to ask yourself honestly, are you staying in this home for 4 to 6 years minimum? I gotta warn you, the transaction costs of real estate are staggering. You're looking at roughly 3% to buy and 6% to sell. Because of those massive fees, buying almost never beats renting unless you plan to stay put for a very long time. And finally, check 4. Actually invest the difference. I literally cannot stress this enough. The entire mathematical advantage of renting completely falls apart if you don't put your savings to work in the market. The renter only beats the buyer because she puts that capital to work. If you use those savings to, say, buy a nicer car or go on vacation, buying the house would have actually been the better financial move for sure. So, as we wrap up this explainer, the crucial point is that you must measure math over pride. Look, a house gives you stability, control, and a place to truly call your own. Those are absolutely fantastic lifestyle benefits, and honestly, they are worth paying for. But I want to leave you with this final, provocative question to help you rethink your next real estate move. Is the house you're looking at an actual wealth machine, or is it simply a lifestyle purchase? Know the difference, run your own math, and make the choice that truly builds your future. Thanks for joining me today.